Hello everyone and welcome back to the SteemTrail Gaming news. Today is the 20th January of 2018. My name is Kralizec and I will guide you through today's news. Today we got 3 stories for you. First one is the big story of today, when an Overwatch pro player that competes in the Overwatch League, which has recently started, has been suspended for some very graphic language. Then we're going to talk about Castlevania returning to Netflix this summer. And last of all, we're going to talk about a pretty old MMO called Rift, who has came up with the idea that they could have also a subscription-based server that has no loot boxes. But let's begin with the big story of today. Let's begin with Overwatch League. So, Overwatch League began just 10 days ago, and it has been so far a pretty big success, as it's drawn over 10 million viewers just in the first week, averaging at around 250,000 viewers per minute, which are some pretty insane numbers, taking consideration this is the first big attempt at making esports sort of more mainstream, with leagues and teams based in cities, so people can sort of create a fandom instead just focusing on random players or just focusing on the tournaments in general, not really having their favorite team, as I think it is actually the case for the vast majority of people who focus at esports at this point. But there was a post-game stream that happened, well, not so long ago again, because the league is pretty new, where a player named Felix Langlio, better known as XQC, which is a horrible name because why the fuck would you name yourself as that? And he has insulted Aston Mama Vilbut, who plays for the Houston Outlaws, by the way. Felix plays for Dallas Fuel, and obviously he has broken the rules, so he has been suspended. More precisely, he has been suspended for the next 4 matches, and he has to pay a fine of $2,000. I think the fine is maybe even too low for what he actually said. So I'm going to quote him here because, well, the quote is quite graphic and I want to really say these are not my own words. So what happened is Wilmot used Langlio's, catchphrase, which is rolled and smoked. And Langlio, who wasn't even playing at that point, he proceeded to yell, "No, you didn't smoke shit. Shut your fucking mouth. Go back there, suck a fat cock." I mean, he would like that. Yeah, obviously you can see this isn't something a pro player who's competing essentially currently the biggest esports thing that is out there should say. It's the same thing as if a footballer just came and yelled at another player, the same exact thing, or anything else similarly graphic. The thing that adds a little bit of a caveat to this is that Wilmot is an openly gay person. So this sort of produced an even larger scandal where a lot of medias who tend to lean on to the more progressive side of things are just calling this openly homophobic. And here, sadly, I actually have to agree with them. And even though I don't like their political views, most of the time, when something blatantly just insulting to a gay person, because he wouldn't use this insult if the person wasn't gay, I think. If he was fat, he would just call him, "Oh, go, you didn't smoke shit, shut your fucking fat mouth." That's what he would say if that person was fat. But because he was gay, he decided to use this insult, and obviously that's just not cool. I think the 4 matches ban is probably okay. It's something similar to what happens, for example, to football or soccer if you're American by chance. Here in Czech Republic, if a person does something like bad, I remember here in Czech Republic we used to have a football player whose name was Rybka, and he was, well, quite a meanie. He would yell things, he would insult other players, he would insult the referees, and he would often get just suspended for a few matches, like 2 or 3 matches. And getting suspended for 4 matches seems like a pretty decent solution to this. The fine, on the other hand, I think should be slightly larger. $2,000 obviously isn't a small sum of money, but these people tend to make a lot more money just purely from donations like every week, especially if they're big name pro players. And on top of that, they're getting sponsorships. On top of that, they're getting their YouTube monetization money. On top of that, they're getting their Twitch money from donations. They probably have a Patreon. Actually, makes me wonder, does this guy have a Patreon? Let's try to quickly find out. Patreon XQC. Okay, this didn't work the way I wanted it. XQC here. Okay, doesn't seem like I can see his Patreon, though. I would be willing to get. Okay, X Queen Simon Q. Okay, there are a few people with similar names, but I'm not sure if any of them is actually him. Though I would guess he probably does at least have a decent donation system set up for himself as a streamer when he's streaming, what he's like training, etc., etc. So the fine, I think, the fines should at least represent 1 month's pay of such a person, I think, so they actually feel it in their pocket. And if they're actually not dumb enough to not have savings, so they can cover 1 month without pay, well, that's sort of their fault. Yeah? So, you know, let's be nice and say at least a 2 weeks earning, and I would be willing to bet that he earns at least $40,000, maybe $50,000 per month. Maybe slightly less, but that would be my guess. So I think the fine should be around $10,000 per such an actually pretty big break of the rules, I think. Obviously it wasn't like cheating, but still. The thing is, these people are sort of set an example to other players, you know? Pro players are the ones who set the standard for the rest of the community. That's why League of Legends is so toxic, because a lot of the top players are extremely toxic. And on one hand, you can understand why. They are really good players, and when they see somebody making a stupid mistake on a super high level of play, well, they're probably and rightfully pissed. The difference between a person who is, let's call it cool, and a person who is just a jerk is the fact that the person who is cool will just think it. You know, he will be like, oh God, how the fuck did he do that? But he will not say it out loud. He will just have that thought inside his brain, and he might complain, but he will complain, oh, that was just a bad play. Well, sadly that happens. Hopefully the person will learn next time and do it better. And if they're just doing bad stuff all around, the solution isn't to yell at them and call them losers and call them, you know, anything graphic for that point. The solution is to be like, hey, maybe man, you should just call it quits for today. Obviously, this isn't your day, but I'm pretty sure that on other days you're good. So if you want to, you can contact me. We can play a little bit more together. Or you don't even have to invite them to play with you more. Just tell them, like, you know, tell them to not play anymore today, but do it in a calm and cool way. Don't be a jerk. Okay, let's move on to our second piece of news for today. Let's move on to Castlevania returning to Netflix this summer. So Castlevania, if anybody doesn't know, is at this point are actually two different things. For one thing, it's a pretty long series of video games that a lot of people love. But what happened is that they actually decided to make a Netflix series out of it last year. And it was a pretty decent series, though really short. It had just 4 episodes, so if you're more of sort of a person who enjoys binging, like for a whole day, just watching a series, one day, second day, third day, for a week in a row, Castlevania really wasn't the thing for you. But it's going to get closer as an additional 8 episodes will get released in the summer. They don't have a release date at the moment. We just have a statement from Varen Elis, who said people kept asking, so I guess word didn't get around. We're coming back this summer for 8 episodes from at Netflix. I think, yeah, we can be very happy about it because the production value on Castlevania was amazing. The stories were not really my cup of tea. I prefer sci-fi to fantasy, but if you do like fantasy, you like animated series, this will be totally up your alley, and you can look forward to it in just a few short months. And then our last piece of news for today. So Rift, one of the actually first big competitors to World of Warcraft that actually managed to stick around. Obviously it had to change its model over the time. Right now it is a free-to-play game. I actually remember it being a subscription-based game. I think I remember it. Yeah, I do. I think it was. So right now they obviously have microtransactions in their game. And one of the types of microtransactions they have in their game are, sadly, loot boxes. But with all the shit that has been surrounding loot boxes in the past few months, they had actually, I think, a pretty decent idea. So they sort of decided maybe we could like bring subscription-based services back into the box, back into the game, and the way they're doing it is that they will now have 2 different types of servers. One of them will be free to play, where microtransactions will be included in the game, including loot boxes, and then they will have servers that are based on a subscription models. Here, there will be just a little small shop where you can buy things with microtransactions. Hopefully it will all just be cosmetic stuff. If it isn't, they will have a big ass problem on their hands. But the thing is, there will be no loot boxes in the shop at that mode. And I think that's a pretty decent solution more companies should take a look into. So either, especially companies that runs different instances for their worlds. You know, if it's like PUBG, it's probably impossible to do something like that, or Overwatch, because you just cannot separate the player bases in such a way. But especially MMOs, where loot boxes are getting more and more common, with persistent worlds that are based on different servers, could start offering these, where one type of players are just willing to pay a monthly subscription fee to run the servers, and the other aren't, and they're pretty much relying on the whales buying loot boxes in just tons, because that's how most gaming games just work these days, especially in mobile. Sadly, I don't see the solution like this happening on mobile, as most games actually are more closely related to like Dota or just those kind of things, where MMOs are played in short bursts and not really in a persistent world. Though there are a lot of those big strategy games that could maybe try this model, where you would pay like, I don't know, $3 to $4 a month, and you would get inside a world where everybody has a fair chance to win, and it isn't based on just how much money that one person who is dominating everybody on my server has spent. And with that being said, that's going to be it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, please consider giving us a like here on YouTube and subscribing to our channel if you are watching this on Steam. Maybe you want to upvote our blog and follow it. Either way, you should leave a comment. Do you think the graphic language actually warranted that suspension? Maybe you think it even warranted more, as I do, but be sure to leave a comment about that. And be sure to tune in tomorrow, as tomorrow we will be having the weekly gaming podcast with me and Tygergamer. And that's it for today, so see you guys later with more gaming content.